guys, it's Lotus and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to continue on with our read-along of Urha. What's that? Another read-along on the same day? Why, yes it is, because I can't wait until Maran gets back and I want to hurry up and see him reunite with Shizun. So, we're going to read the next two chapters now. Okay, let's jump right into it. Chapter 126. Shizun, wait one more chapter for me. Dang. Does that mean he doesn't appear in this chapter either? Okay. The end of Yuheng Elder's seclusion was naturally a cause for celebration for the entire sect, but Shuejiangyang knew that Chuaning disliked the bustle of gatherings and didn't have much of a way with words, so he planned out what to say and what to do for him ahead of time. Chuaning was worried that he might be a bit awkward at the banquet at first, but he soon found out that he really didn't have to worry at all. Shuejiangyang may be a big burly man, but he was keenly perceptive and had a full grasp on the mood in the room. Before the gathering of all the elders and masses of disciples, he spoke some words from the bottom of his heart. Not so many as to come off like a deliberate attempt to stir up emotion, but being genuinely moving instead. Only Lusun Elder couldn't read the air, laughing as he shouted, "Yuheng, why the long face on this happy occasion? You should say a few words too. Some of the newer disciples here don't even know what you look like." Shuejiangyang tried to save him. "Lusun, I've already said everything there is to say for Yuheng. Don't put him on the spot." "That's different. He's got to put in at least a couple of words." "But he..." "It's fine." Shuejiangyang was about to say something else when he was interrupted by a deep, cool voice. "Since there are new disciples here, I'll just say a few words." Chuaning stood up as he spoke. His eyes scanned Mengpo Hall, through the bustling crowd of a couple thousand people, all looking at him. But Maran wasn't among them. Chuaning thought for a moment, then said, "The Red Lotus Pavilion on the southern summit has Marad defensive mechanisms and mechanical guardians. In order to prevent accidental injuries, new disciples are advised against visiting without cause." The crowd fell silent. Lusun couldn't help asking, "That's it?" "That's it," Chuaning responded, then dropped his gaze and swept his sleeves aside to sit back down. The silence stretched on. The new disciples were pensive. Dying and then coming back to life after 5 years of seclusion from the world was definitely not something that most people would ever experience. Shouldn't you at least say something heartfelt about your feelings, or express some gratitude to your savior? Things like that? But he just tossed out that one line like he was reading out the tenets or something, and left it at that. Where's the sincerity? But the older disciples couldn't help laughing quietly, several of them whispering to each other, "That's Yuheng Elder all right. Still doesn't like talking." "Seriously, bad temper and short fuse. He's got a good-looking face, but that's about it," someone quipped under the cover of everyone else's chattering, from where they stood far enough away that Chuaning wouldn't hear. The crowd chuckled amongst themselves as they talked, then turned to look toward that white-robed person sitting next to Shuejiangyang. "Guys, I was just wondering, Master Huaizui left immediately after Chuaning woke up, so did him and Chuaning get to talk with each other to have a little bit of a catch-up because they hadn't seen each other for years? I mean, they were master and disciple after all, but Huaizui didn't even stay for the banquet. The banquet began. There were spicy and savory Sichuan dishes, of course, but also lots of finely made desserts and beautifully arranged mild and sweet jiangnian dishes, covering entire tables in abundance. Shuejiangyang also opened 100-some jars of top-quality pure blossom white wine to share between the tables, and cups were generously filled with the amber-colored wine. Chuaning was on his 4th stewed crab meatball when a large bowl was suddenly put down in front of him with a clang. "Yuheng, let's have a cup!" "That's a bowl." "Aiya, who cares if it's a cup or a bowl? Just drink it. It's your favorite, pure blossom white." Shuejiangyang's bold features were practically glowing with joy in the cheerful atmosphere. "I know how much you can drink. 1,000 cups won't even get you tipsy. Come on, cheers!" Chuaning smiled and picked up the big bowl, clinked it with Shuejiangyang. "Since sect leader says so, cheers." With that, he downed the bowl and flipped it over to show Shuejiangyang. Shuejiangyang was overjoyed, but the rims of his eyes turned a little red. "That's my man. I remember 5 years ago when you asked me for a jar of the top quality pure blossom white from the cellar, and I wouldn't give it to you back then. I couldn't regret it enough later on. Though thought I'd never get to... He trailed off, then abruptly lifted his head and huffed out a long exhale before declaring loudly, Never mind, no point dwelling on it now. If you want it, you can have the whole cellar of Pure Blossom White. I'll make sure you have good wine to drink for the rest of your life. Chuaning said with a smile, Deal. While they chatted, Xuemeng was over in a corner with someone, whispering back and forth for a good while before Xuemeng suddenly grabbed that person and came over with them in tow, both of them bowing together to Chuaning in proper upright form. Shizun! Xuemeng lifted his head, his youthful face handsome and commanding. Shizun! The other person lifted his head as well to reveal a face that was beautiful like a lotus coming into bloom, like wisp of clouds drifting lightly between peaks. Who else could it be but Shimei? Shimei said bashfully, This disciple was held up seeing patients at the free clinic in Wuchang town today, and only just now came to visit Shizun. Pray forgive this disciple's shameful tardiness. It's no matter. Chuaning looked Shimei over carefully through lowered lashes, and though his expression remained neutral, he was caught off guard by a sudden sense of loss deep inside. Moran's beloved person had grown up to be way too incomparably beautiful. If the Shimei 5 years ago was still a fledgling beauty, then the grown-up Shimei standing before him now was like a queen of the night in full bloom, its tender green sepals no longer able to hide the glistening white within, snowy petals quivering as they unfurl, its loveliness eclipsing everything else around it. He had a pair of sweet peach blossom eyes that were clear and dewy. The curve of his nose was gentle and perfect. A little more would have seemed too harsh, and a little less would have looked too weak. And his lips were red and full, like a dew-laden cherry, and every word spoken was sweet and soft. Shizun, this disciple missed you so much. He rarely ever expressed his feelings so openly. Chuaning didn't know what to say for a moment, caught by surprise as he was. Shimei's eyes were red-rimmed with emotion, and Chuaning couldn't help feeling a little ashamed of himself. What was he being jealous of Shi Mingjing for? He was so much older than them, and their superior to boot. Why should he be jealous of Shi Mingjing? Thinking thus, Chuaning nodded and said mildly, You can both get up. His 2 disciples stood up by his leave. ... Chuaning had only just gotten his feelings under control, but then he glanced at Shimei and froze. ... Shimei was taller than Xuemeng? Chuaning choked a little, cleared his throat twice, and couldn't resist stealing a couple more glances. Not just a little taller either. But Shimei's figure was even better like this, with broad shoulders, a slim waist, and long legs, looking gentle and demure but with a suggestion of subtle assertiveness, an air of grace and elegance that defies words. This grown-up Shimei was nothing like the fragile-looking adolescent he was used to. Chuaning's face fell again despite himself. He felt like he had lost a little too pathetically. Oh, Chuaning, please don't be so hard on yourself. You're a different type of beauty. Shimei and Chuaning can be both equally beautiful in their own way. And don't worry, you actually don't have any competition. Moran only has eyes for you now. But, forget it. He hadn't kept his feelings for Moran to himself even until death, so there was no way he'd ever say it in the future. As for Moran, that guy had chased him all the way to the underworld and still couldn't tell him that he liked him, so there was no way he'd ever notice in the future either. The 2 of them can just be master and disciple for the rest of this life. That's a strong bond too. It's fine. As for anything beyond that, no point forcing something that wasn't meant to be. Xuemeng, red-faced, suddenly nudged Shimei with his elbow and shot him a meaningful look. Helplessly, Shimei said in a soft voice, You really want me to do it? Yeah, it'd be better if you do it. But you're the one who got these things over the 5 years. Yeah, that's why it'd be awkward for me to. You do it. Besides, you brought back some stuff with you today, right? All right. Shimei sighed and gave in, taking a huge rosewood box that Xuemeng had been hiding behind his back and holding it in both hands as he walked over to Chuaning, who had already sat back down to continue eating his stewed crab meatball. Shizun, the young master and I prepared some gifts over the past 5 years. Just some small gestures. Please accept them. As he spoke, Xuemeng's face grew redder and redder behind him. In an attempt to cover up how flustered he was, He crossed his arms and turned his head away in feigned nonchalance, as if suddenly fascinated by the decoratively carved pillars of Mengpo Hall. Generally speaking, opening a gift in front of the giver was impolite, but as their Shizun, Chuaning didn't want to accept anything too valuable, so he thought for a moment and then asked, "What is it?" It's just some things we got here and there." Smart and perceptive as he was, Shimei immediately figured out Chuaning's concern and said, Nothing expensive. Just take it back and open it for a look if that's what Shizun is worried about." But Chuaning countered, "There's no difference between opening it now or when I get back. I'll just go ahead and open it." No, don't open it!" Xuemeng froze for a second, then immediately rushed over in a panic and tried to grab the box. But Chuaning had already opened it and even threw him an impassive look. "What are you running for? Don't trip and fall." Xuemeng, ... Sure enough, the box was stuffed full of all kinds of interesting-looking things, including a few delicately embroidered hair ribbons, finely crafted hair clasps, and intricate belt buckles made of jade. Chuaning casually picked up a bottle of sedatives and saw on it the seal of Hanlin the Sage glistening under the candlelight. The contents of the box was quite costly indeed. Chuaning really didn't know what to say, opting instead to look up and shoot Xuemeng a glare. Xuemeng's face grew even redder. Xue Zhengyang watched on from the side, amused. He said, "You hung, just accept it as a token of Munger's thoughtfulness. The other elders all got you fairly pricey gifts too anyway. What's one more?" Chuaning said, "Xuemeng is my disciple," the implication being that he didn't want to accept these many things from his disciple. "But it's just some things I picked up over the last 5 years that I thought would suit Shizun." Hearing him say that, Xuemeng panicked. "And I only use money I earned myself, not a cent of Dad's money. Shizun, if you don't take it, He'll be upset, won't be able to sleep." Xue Zhengyang filled in for his son. "Might even go on a hunger strike." Chuaning, ... He really didn't know how to deal with this father-son pair, so he looked back down at the box and noticed another, even smaller wooden box lying inside the pile of stuff. "What's this?" He took it out and opened it to reveal 4 little clay figurines. Confused, he looked up at Xuemeng, only to see that Xuemeng's face was currently the color of a ripe tomato. Seeing Chuaning look his way, Xuemeng hurriedly lowered his head, the handsome young man acting like a bashful little boy under his Shizun stare, unable to make eye contact. Chuaning asked, "What is this?" Xue Zhengyang was curious as well. "Let's take it out and have a look." "No, don't!" Hand on his forehead, Xuemeng mumbled helplessly, but his old man had already cheerfully taken out the 4 little clay dolls and arranged them in a row. The little figurines were crudely made, ugly and crooked, and all looked basically the same except for one being slightly taller and the other 3 being slightly shorter. Xuemeng's work, to be sure. "Oh, this is adorable! Did Xuemeng mold and carve these little figurines himself? It must be of Shizun and his 3 disciples." Xuemeng had originally wanted to learn the mechanical arts from Chuaning, but it only took a day before Chuaning had him switch to the blade instead, for no other reason than the fact that the boy had managed to make absolutely nothing out of after an entire afternoon spent at the Redlow's pavilion, but had nearly managed to tear down the machine room with just a file. It must have been hard work to make these clay dolls with nothing but the power of his pure heart. Xue Zhengyang grabbed one of the dolls and looked it over, turning it this way and that, but still couldn't figure it out. So he asked his son, "This thing that you made, what is it?" Xuemeng said stubbornly, "Nothing. I was just messing around." "This black one is really ugly. That taller white one looks much better." Xue Zhengyang mumbled as he thumbed at the little clay doll's head. Xuemeng yelled, "Don't touch it!" But it was too late. The little doll spoke. "Hands off, uncle." Xue Zhengyang, ... Chuaning, ... Xuemeng gave him a sound slap, then covered his eyes with his arms, not wanting to even look any longer. It took Xue Zhengyang quite a while to put 2 and 2 together, laughing out loud when he finally figured it out. "Oh-ho? Munger, is this supposed to be Ronner? Didn't you make him a bit too ugly? Ha 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 ha!" Xuemeng shot back angrily. "That's 'cause he is ugly! Look at the Shizun I made instead! Pretty, right?" His face was bright red as he spoke, pointing at the white painted clay doll. But the tip of his finger inadvertently brushed against the little white doll's head. It humped coldly and said, Don't be impudent. Chuaning ... Ha 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 ha! Shui Jianyong laughed so hard he nearly cried. That's pretty good, it's pretty good! You put a voice charm in them, didn't you? The little one's actually doing a pretty good impression of Yu Hong's tone. Ha ha ha! Chuaning said with a flick of his sleeves. Ridiculous. But then carefully picked up the 4 little clay dolls, tucked them back into the box, and put the box next to himself. His face betrayed nothing the entire time, looking calm as ever, but there was a hint of lingering gentleness in his eyes when he looked back up. That's so sweet of Xuemeng. Oh, that's so adorable. He made little clay dolls of himself, Shimei, Maran, and Chuaning so that they could keep Chuaning company, little trinkets, and they have voice charms, so it's like putting a little voice box inside the doll, so if Chuaning is missing any of them, he can just listen to them. It's so cute! Our adorable Meng Meng strikes again. I'll take this one, but you keep the rest. It's all things you can use too, and this master isn't wanting for any of them. But... Young master, just do as Shizun says. Shimei smiled and consoled him quietly, then lowered his voice to say, what the young master wanted to give the most was the box of little clay dolls anyway, right? Xuemeng was so mad there was practically smoke rising from his head. He shot Shimei an angry glare, stomped his feet, then bit his lip and refused to talk anymore. Xuemeng had always been flattered and fawned upon while growing up, never had words he couldn't say or things he couldn't do, so if he liked something or disliked something, he'd always express it loudly and frankly. Chuaning felt like he was extraordinary for that reason, because this kind of candor was something that he himself never had, and one of Xuemeng's most remarkable qualities. He envied that about him, that openness that was so unlike the way that he himself could never be honest, claiming to not care about something even as it occupied his thoughts. He had gotten a little better about it since coming back to life, but it was what it was, and the changes weren't really too noticeable. It would take more than one cold day for a river to freeze 3 feet deep. He felt like he probably wouldn't really change all that much, even if he were to try for the rest of his life. And besides, he wouldn't really be himself anymore if he changed too much. The banquet was nearly over, but Maran had still not come back. Chuaning's chest felt all stuffy, but he said nothing about it, even though he really wanted to ask Shui Jianyong what exactly Maran had written in that letter from earlier today, wanted to ask if he knew where exactly Maran was right now. But instead, he only gripped the wine cup and downed one drink after another, his joints white with the force of his grip. The wine burned all the way down, but it did not burn enough to warm his heart, not enough for him to summon the courage to turn around and ask when he would be back. Author's notes. There are perks on Weibo today. Thank yous, Shu Liang, for your picture of Shizun walking in the snow looking for plum blossoms. A very, very handsome Shizun with his thick cloak. I can't help but want to bury my face into the fur of his hood. It's super great. I want to lick it. Thanks. Thank you, salted fish and flying snow for the cutie Shasuni. While we're on this topic, Shasuni will not be coming online ever again, although he's Shizun's child form. I feel kind of sad for some reason. I'm gonna miss Shasuni too. Cradling osmanthus cake and asking da-ga-ga for lotus flower crisp and stuff. Is he really not afraid of repeating the 4th Ghost King's mistakes? Haha, thanks. Thank you, Shuanghua stabbing Meatbun for non-gongsi. Haha, I really need to have a good laugh at this. Mermaid non-gongsi, ha ha ha. Yeah, Wangxi is probably laughing himself awake from his dream. He went again, the ship dynamics, ha ha ha. Is this called an heartless mermaid non-gongga's passionate prince loyal dog xia? Is this called an heartless mermaid non-gonggaga ex-passionate prince loyal dog, yeah, Wangxi? Haha. But little koi non-gonggunga is real. Oh my gosh, sorry. But little koi non-gonggaga is really cute. I want to tease him, thanks. Okay, so pretty much in this section, Meatbun is just thanking a lot of different commenters and people who produced fan art for Erha. And so we've got a lot of cute fan art, and Meatbun is just really appreciating all of it. We got fan art of Shizun, we got fan art of Shasuni, we've got fan art of Nan-gongzi and Ye Wangxi. Okay, now we're up to the mini theater. Mini theater, the reason behind the team's tardiness. Why is Maran so late? Let's find out. Chuaning. Late is late. I don't want to explain. Just punish me. Maran, point 5. There was an old woman walking too slowly on the way here, and she got in my way. I came here right after killing her, arriving a little late. Hand this venerable one a clean handkerchief. Some blood splattered onto my face. Damn, Ta Xianjun. Moran 1.0. Ha ha ha! An old granny was crossing the road. The way she was leaning on her cane was so funny. I snatched the cane she was using to cross the road because I wanted to see something comedic happen. But I returned it to her afterwards, so don't worry, don't worry. Moran 1.0 is the prankster then. And Moran 2.0, our good boy. On the way here, I saw an elderly person who had difficulty walking, so I helped her cross the road and delayed my journey. My apologies. Give it up to Moran 2.0. I knew we could rely on this Husky. I knew he could turn himself around eventually. Moran 2.0 really has to duke it out with his 1.0 and 0.5 self though, honestly. Shimei, I ran into a patient kicking up a fuss so that he could attain some benefits he wasn't entitled to, and I really couldn't leave. Sorry. Xuemeng, none of your shitty business. Nangongsi, the one above is really uncouth. I'll be more polite. What does that have to do with you? Ye Wangxi, I am never late. Look again. It should be your hourglass that's malfunctioning. Mei Han Shui, for every step I take, there will be female cultivators coming up to pester me. Even if I leave the house 4 hours earlier, I'll still end up late. I've given up on fighting it. So Mei Han Shui is a little narcissistic there, a little full of himself, but also trying his best to make an appearance. Will he show up eventually? Meatbun? Huh? Okay, so to recap chapter 126, Shizun attends the banquet, and the whole time he's just wondering where Moran is, and Moran is still late. As the title implied, Moran would not make it back for that chapter, but he did get to have some fun with Shui Zhengyang. He shared some of his favorite wine with him. He also got a bunch of presents from Shimei and Xuemeng. His favorite being the 4 little clay figurines that Xuemeng made of the 4 of them, and I bet he's gonna treasure them like they're precious jewels because they are from the heart. Unlike the other things that he's not too fond of, all the rich jade and expensive jewels and hair pieces, I feel like he's really gonna treasure and cherish the dolls that Xuemeng made. But yeah, let's see in the next chapter, will Moran make it back? Let's find out. Chapter 127. Shizun, careful, the ground's slippery. Okay, he's probably gonna be back, right? Okay. But Chuaning didn't ask, and Shui Zhengyang didn't bring it up. In fact, the sect leader of Sicheng Peak was getting kind of plastered, feeling lightheaded and slurring his words. He suddenly leaned over, stared at Chuaning and said, Yuheng, you're upset. I am not. You're mad. I am not, Chuaning repeated. Who upset you? Chuaning ... Should he ask? He'd feel a lot better if he just asked. Maybe Moran didn't actually say that he'd definitely be back tonight. Maybe he only said that he'll try his best to make it back. And Shui Zhengyang just said it wrong. Or remembered it wrong. Chuaning glanced toward the door, at the darkness of night outside. The banquet was coming to a close, and the seats would soon be cold. His first day out of seclusion, and Moran hadn't made it back in time. Every single disciple of Sicheng Peak was here, including the ones whose names he didn't know and the ones he'd never even met before. Only he wasn't here. Without him here, the banquet was incomplete. Without him here... Oh wait, I just said that. Okay, I'll say it again. Without him here, the banquet was incomplete. Saying it twice because Chuaning is really missing Moran right now. All the stewed crab meatballs, sweet osmanthus lotus root, and fragrant pear blossom white wine in the world wouldn't make it complete. Chuaning closed his eyes, but there was suddenly a ruckus from the direction of Mengpo Hall's front entrance, with a bunch of disciples yelling excitedly in the distance. Aiya, look! What's that outside? There's something in the sky! More and more people gathered over there, and even those in the hall could hear the lively crackling sounds and thunderous booms coming from the outside, one after another. They walked out to the verdant lawn just outside Mengpo Hall, looking up at the sky all lit up by fireworks, explosions of millions of little glittering specks blooming and scattering against the backdrop of the starry night sky. Fireworks! The younger disciples beamed with joy, youthful faces illuminated by the flickering lights above, the sky full of stars reflected in their eyes. It's so pretty! I've never seen fireworks this big, not even at New Year's! Chuaning walked slowly out from the hall as well. He wasn't in the greatest mood. Though he was grateful that Xue Jianyong had gone to the trouble of preparing such a brilliant fireworks show, the heaviness in his chest continued to weigh on him. Fwee! A sharp whistling sound pierced through the night sky. He loosened his head he loosened his head. He lifted his head listlessly to see a streak of golden red light shoot into the open sky like an arrow loosened from its bow. How beautiful. If only that person were here too. Bang! That brilliant flare flew up to a height about level with the Big Dipper's handle before bursting in explosion to fill the night sky with countless shimmering sparkles, eclipsing all the stars of the Milky Way and stealing the light from the moon itself. The fireworks scattered like so many petals of haitang blossom set adrift by a passing breeze, floating and dancing like wintry snow, glimmering and rippling like open waters. Amidst the splendid display and lively bustling of the crowd, Chuaning slowly closed his eyes. Disciple Moran, welcome Shizun back from seclusion, someone said from behind him all of a sudden, every word clear and needle-like. Chuaning began to tremble lightly, feeling like there were thorns in his back, fire in his throat. With his heart beating all out of rhythm, blood racing through his veins, and unable to breathe, he whipped his head around. Standing behind him were a couple of disciples who had just come out from Mengpo Hall, all of them looking up at the sky in amazement, and one of them had read aloud thus. Gradually, it wasn't just the one person reading aloud anymore. Everyone found it novel and interesting. Everyone, including the youngest disciples, the men and the women, the ones standing alone and those in groups, all of them were looking up at the glittering resplendent night sky and reading out aloud. Disciple Moran, welcome Shizun back from seclusion. That's so romantic! Oh my gosh, Moran prepared this whole entire fireworks show for Shizun? That's so sweet. The utterances carried a tenderness like the tide, gentle as sleepy whispers. The words bore determination like a boulder stone, firm as mighty mountains. Chuaning's head snapped skyward, where the brilliant fireworks, guided by spiritual energy, had spelled out the sentence in huge shimmering letters across the night sky. The fireworks flowed into a magnificent river that could probably be seen from even hundreds of miles away, and in that moment, in that night, the colorful glimmering specks felt like they were converging in on him from across hills and mountains, across time and bygones, bringing with them that person's joys and sorrows, longings and regrets. He suddenly felt like a piece of driftwood afloat in the ocean, and the ocean was Moran's eyes, the way they had looked when he had suddenly pulled him into his arms in front of the Ghost King's palace in the underworld, full of warm tenderness, fiery passion, and unwavering determination. There was nowhere to run. He was surrounded by that person's murmurs, that person's laughter, that person's affection. Chuaning didn't want to think about what kind of affection it was, that of a master and disciple, or something else. Just having the affection was enough. Moran didn't manage to make it back before the end of the banquet. Even pushing on through the night without stop, it was simply too far away. Luckily, he still had the signal fireworks made by Xuanji Elder in his bag that had been given to him for use in an emergency, should he meet with some mishap while away from the peak. It was an ingenious creation. By writing a message on paper with spiritual energy, putting it into the tube, and setting off the firework, the message would be right boldly across the sky in letters so large it would be visible from Sicheng Peak from however far away. The signal fireworks were costly and exceedingly difficult to make, but Moran didn't care about that. All he wanted was to make sure that his Shizun wouldn't be upset. Oh, he's so thoughtful! I love Moran 2.0 so much! Even from across mountains and rivers, even separated by time and circumstances, he had to make sure that Chuaning could hear these words. Disciple Moran, welcome Shizun back from seclusion. The banquet came to a close 4 hours later, and it was late at night by the time he got back to the Red Lotus Pavilion. Chuaning smelled like wine. He wanted to take a bath, wash the smell off, but the weather had gotten cooler lately, and the water in the pavilion's lotus pond was too cold for bathing in. He'd nearly caught a cold bathing there yesterday. He thought for a moment, then went inside to fetch a change of clothes and a wooden wash bin, and headed toward Miaoyin Springs. Miaoyin Springs was a sex communal bath. He'd only ever bathed there in his first few months here at Sicheng Peak. This late at night, there would hardly be anyone bathing there. Lifting the thin layer of hemp curtain with one hand, Chuaning walked in. Many parts of Sicheng Peak had been renovated, but Miaoyin Springs was the same as before, with tall black-tiled walls on all sides and sheer veils drifting lightly in the breeze along a winding corridor that led from the front gate to a set of 6 narrow wooden steps lacquered with a clear varnish. The bathers would all take off their shoes and socks before going down these steps, so just one look here would reveal just how many people were currently soaking in the baths. Chuaning took a look while taking off his shoes and socks, and saw that there was only one lone pair of boots here, of a fairly large size and a little dirty, but placed neatly in the corner, rather than carelessly tossed to the ground just because it was empty here. Chuaning wondered whom it was to come here for a bath this late at night. Guys, take a guess. Who do you think these shoes belong to? I think I know. But it was only a fleeting thought. Holding his small washbin, he walked down the steps, barefooted, brushed aside the last set of curtains at the end of the footpath, and walked into the courtyard. The courtyard was hazy with steam from the massive hot spring pond inside that rose and fell with the ground, the water cascading down in a broad, rumbling waterfall. The thick, cloudy steam unfurled gently outwards from the pond, drifting slowly into the air, spreading into every corner and crevice. The thick steam made everything here blurry, and a person had to get very close to another to see their face. Walking across the little footpath of smooth, colorful pebbles under the luxuriant canopy of flowering peach blossoms, Chuaning arrived at the nearest entrance to the baths. There was a low shelf carved from bluestone there specifically for holding clothes. He put his wooden washbin and robe on the shelf, then took off his clothes and walked slowly into the pond. It was nice and warm. He sighed softly in contentment despite himself. If not for the fact that he didn't want to crowd in here with everyone else while bathing, nor did he fancy coming here late at night every day, he'd really rather bathe here than in the cold waters of the Red Lotus Pavilion's simple pond. Shui Jianyang really was fastidious and thorough. He had personally overseen the construction of Miaoyan Springs. Flowers bloomed along the edge of the pond year-round. There was a waterfall at the end of the pond for rinsing off, and there was even a small wooden pavilion on the side to lie down and rest in after soaking, provided with heated stones to be placed along the meridians to help relieve the pressure. Way more indulgent than that rushed bath he had to make do with yesterday at the Red Lotus Pavilion's pond. Delighted and seeing as how there was no one else around, Chuaning let loose for a moment, spreading out his slender body and swimming all the way to the waterfall. Splash! He had only just risen out of the water and wiped his face, a faint smile still lingering at his lips, when he abruptly noticed a man very close to him, showering in the surging waterfall with his back to him. The waterfall was so loud that Chuaning couldn't hear the other person at all, even this close. If he had come out of the water a little later, swam a little further, the tips of his fingers probably would have touched the man's legs. Good thing he had gotten up when he did and hadn't ended up touching the other person, but this was still a bit inappropriately close. He was practically standing right behind the man. He was very tall, quite a bit taller than Chuaning, and his sun-kissed skin was the color of honey, making him seem wild and unrestrained. His shoulders were strong and broad, shoulder blades flexing beneath golden skin with concealed strength as his arms moved. He wasn't overly muscular, but sculpted and evenly toned. The water cascaded over his body, rivulets of it flowing down the wide expanse of his strong masculine back to gather into streams. Some of the water splashed off, but some seemed infatuated with this body of his, clinging to him in a light sheen, loath to part. As someone who was used to being ascetic, Chuaning had never seen such a carnal sight before, and his ears burned red as he hurriedly turned to leave. Heaven only knew if the bottom of the pond was too slippery or if he had taken a false step, but he stumbled and fell face first into the pond, sending a big spray of water splashing into the air. Chuaning's face was bright red with embarrassment and, flustered as he was, he'd even inadvertently swallowed some mouthfuls of water. Remembering that the water was technically used bathwater from that guy behind him, he was so indignant and disgusted that he threw all appearances of calm and composure aside, scrambling and flailing frantically as he tried to get back up. He was the Yuheng elder. How could he? In his panicked fluster, with no dignity left to speak of, there was suddenly a strong, shapely hand on him, pulling him up from the streaming waters. The man had obviously been startled by the happening behind him. "Are you okay?" With one hand around his arm, the man spoke in a deep, calming voice. The difference in their heights was such that his breath puffed out against Chuaning's ear as he lowered his head to speak. "Careful, it's slippery here." Chuaning's ears burned even hotter. He could practically feel that person's chest behind him, mere inches from his back, rising and falling, rising and falling, a merciful relief in each fall like it was sparing his life, a menacing precarity in each rise as it threatened to brush against his back. Wow, Chuaning is so self-conscious right now. He got caught staring at some hot dude in the springs, and we know who that hot dude is, but Chuaning doesn't, and he's like, I cannot believe I was lost in this person's body, like damn. Chuaning was both indignant and mortified at once. Never had he been touched by someone like this before. Shaking the man's hand off of him, Chuaning's face was all surly, even as he avoided eye contact. I'm fine. The deafening sound of the waterfall's rushing waters all but covered up Chuaning's voice. But the man jolted at his voice for some reason, going entirely still for a second before slowly lifting his hand like he wanted to say something, but didn't quite have the courage to. In that moment of hesitation, Chuaning had already walked a ways into the distance and stepped into, or rather, went to hide inside the rushing, roaring current of water. No, it was Maran! Chuaning, you should have turned around. It was definitely Maran. You could have reunited with your disciple right there. You may have even gotten a chance to see his defined body and his growth up close if you had turned around. Oh, dang. Maran realized that was his Shizun, though, by the voice alone. Author's notes. This mini-theater originates from an old joke. Scratch his head. Maran. The title has already reminded Shizun that the ground is slippery. Why does Shizun still slip? LOL. Chuaning. Isn't it pronounced slip carefully? Oh, that's so... Oh my gosh. Okay. This is what we were waiting for, guys. We were waiting for their reunion. Now, they didn't actually exchange any words together, but they have officially reunited after 5 whole years. So to recap this chapter, Chuaning is feeling kind of glum because Maran didn't make it back for the banquet, but Maran knew that Chuaning would be kind of sad, so he prepared something in advance. He prepared a fireworks show with a message greeting Chuaning for returning out of seclusion. And now Chuaning is happy as can be. And Maran does actually make it back just after the banquet is over. He makes his way to clean off in the Miaoyan Springs. And who else is going to Miaoyan Springs? Well, our dear Chuaning is going as well. He thinks that it's probably going to be empty, so he decides to go take a bath. And he realizes that there's another person in the communal springs as well, so he tries his best to not get near them, but unexpectedly he bumps into them, and he even has a moment of haziness where he's like, wow, the color of their honey, the shape of their shoulders, their honey-colored skin, look at their muscles, look at the way the water cascades down their back. And then he like smacks himself like, what am I thinking? Damn, how inappropriate of me. And because he's rushing to get away, he accidentally slips on the slippery rocks beneath the water, and creates a big splash, which gets Maran's attention. Maran turns around to help him steady himself, and he's like, are you okay, dude? And Chuaning's like, it's nothing, it's fine, don't mind me, go back to what you're doing, I'm out of here. And of course, Maran would recognize that voice anywhere, and he's like, Chuaning, my Shizun, naked in this pond next to me, just us two, all alone? He freezes, and Chuaning takes that chance to escape. Now, he didn't leave the springs, he just went to go and clean himself in a different part of the pond. So we'll see if Maran still chooses to pursue him or get dressed first before he makes his official appearance before Chuaning. But yeah, I'm so glad that we covered these 2 chapters, because I was just waiting for Maran to finally get back and for Chuaning to kind of like drool over Maran's new appearance. And he'll drool even more over Maran's new manners, new etiquette and manners. So I'm excited for the chapters to come. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's read along, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye!